It was a quiet evening on May 27th, 2021, when a phone call from San Pedro set off a chain of events that would send shockwaves across Belize. A respected police superintendent, Henry Jemmott, known affectionately as King, was shot in a tragic incident that would ultimately spark national debate over justice, privilege, and accountability. Today on Caribbean Files, we bring you the full story, from the dock by the water's edge to courtrooms and family heartbreak. If you value clarity, truth, and the human story behind true crime, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue shining a light on compelling investigative stories from across the Caribbean. Henry King Jemmott carried that nickname as naturally as his calm, steady gaze. The only son among a group of sisters in Dangriga, he was always viewed as their protector, and he wore the role honorably. His siblings, Marie, Cherry, and others, say he was the doting brother who instinctively looked out for them, and for others throughout his life. The name King, his family explains, wasn't a boast, it was a symbol of responsibility. Raised along the coast of southern Belize, Jemmott joined the Belize Police Department in his late teens and rose steadily through the ranks. His calm temperament, dedication to duty, and strong sense of order made him a trusted figure. By 2021, he was Superintendent of Police, overseeing major operations including traffic control initiatives, narcotic sweeps, and community outreach programs. His colleagues remember a man defined by discipline, patience, and ethical leadership. Jasmine Hartin was born in Canada in the early 1980s and grew up in Ontario. She eventually moved to Belize, where she became known not only for her work in real estate and hospitality, but also as the partner of Andrew Ashcroft, son of Lord Michael Ashcroft, a billionaire British businessman and major political donor. The Ashcrofts were already influential in Belizean business and politics. Andrew and Jasmine's visibility grew as they opened Alaya Belize, a luxury beachfront resort, in 2021. By all appearances, Jasmine was a rising figure in Belize's elite circles, an expatriate who had blended into the country's high society. But below the surface, tensions brewed. Friends later described her as energetic and ambitious, but also anxious under the pressures of high expectations. Those pressures, combined with her struggles as a new mother of twins and strained relations with Andrew Ashcroft, would later form part of her own explanation for what occurred that night. Reports indicate that Hartin and Jemmott were longtime friends who occasionally socialized, though Hartin has denied any romantic involvement. The date, May 27th, a typical Thursday, started like any other. Jemmott had plans with Jasmine Hartin, who had reached out saying she was feeling unsafe and needed his help. Contrary to some reports, they were not partying together. Jemmott responded to her distress call with the same sense of duty that guided his public work. He left Dangriga around 8 p.m., drove to San Pedro, and arrived before 10 p.m. He parked near her condo and walked the short distance to meet Hartin on a quiet dock overlooking the lagoon. It was peaceful there late at night, moonlight reflecting off gentle waves, the distant sound of island nightlife softened by water. Hartin later described feeling anxious. She'd said she was uneasy earlier that evening, which prompted Jemmott's visit. Many say he came as he would to anyone in danger, calm, supportive, and ready to help. On the pier, they sat close. Some whiskey passed between them. The hours passed without report of distress. This was not a loud, drunken gathering. It was intended to be a safe space. In police statements, Hartin said that after discussing her stress, she expressed a desire to learn how to handle a firearm, one that Jemmott carried as part of his duties. This is where the evening took a fatal turn. Hartin asked if he could walk her through the operation of his Glock 17, the same semi-automatic service weapon she'd said she wanted to understand. As he unloaded the magazine and removed a round from the chamber, He handed her the weapon, and that's when she claims she believed it empty. As the Glock 17 changed hands between Jasmine Hartin and Henry Jemmott, what followed remains forever etched in tragedy. According to Hartin's version, she believed the weapon was unloaded, but the events that unfolded reveal a far more complex and chilling scenario. Just after midnight, Hartin and Jemmott stood close on the dock, the gun at chest to head level. Hartin has maintained that Jemmott passed the weapon chamber first, intending to teach her firearm safety. Instead of moving the barrel downward or pointing it away, the gun remained centered. Suddenly, a single loud crack echoed. The bullet struck behind Gemmott's right ear, traveling downward into his brain, an inscription of death in an instant. There was no exchange of words, no attempt to dodge or block, no sign of awareness that anything was wrong until Hartin felt the impact and cried out. The weapon dropped onto planks below. The magazine remained loose in her other hand. The first 911 call was made not by her, but by a hotel security guard who'd heard her screams. When investigators arrived at the pier the night Henry Jemmott was shot, they recovered his own Glock 17 service pistol, disassembled on site, with exactly one bullet fired. The spent casing lay on the wooden planks nearby, confirming a single shot had been discharged. A post-mortem quickly followed. Doctors confirmed the bullet was fired at point-blank range, verifying it struck just behind the ear with a downward trajectory consistent with upright contact shooting. They ruled out drowning or self-inflicted injury, noting the fatal proximity negated accidental discharge from others or distant passing boats. The findings matched Jasmine Hartin's claim that the gun was held around head height when it discharged. A formal ballistic expert review endorsed the scene analysis. It confirmed the weapon had functioned normally, there were no defects, and the shell casing ejection didn't match accidental drops. It was the result of a smooth, buttoned discharge. No gunpowder residue was tested, but forensic adherence to procedure lent weight to the ballistic findings. Though no video surveillance covered the pier, investigators collected peripheral recordings from surrounding establishments. Those showed Hartin pacing after the shot, but no other persons entering or leaving the vicinity, even under infrared analysis. Statements from neighbors and resort staff reinforced that only 2 individuals were on the pier before the gunfire, which aligned with the forensic reality. According to Hartin's account, earlier that night, Jemmott had removed live rounds from the magazine and placed them aside. Under the moonlight, she had been practicing with the gun, inserting and removing the magazine, believing the weapon was clear. Unbeknownst to her, a single round remained in the chamber. Then, as she attempted to remove the magazine again, the gun just went off. She insisted she didn't pull the trigger intentionally. Hartin and Jemmott had consumed alcohol earlier in the evening. Police officers noted no signs of impairment when they arrived and chose not to conduct blood alcohol tests because they judged it unnecessary at the time. Later, businessman Andrew Ashcroft, her former partner, alleged she had been intoxicated and possibly under the influence of drugs. But these claims never entered court records or evidence. The small town of Dangriga was rocked when news spread of Henry Jemmott's death. He wasn't just a senior police officer, he was a beloved brother, a devoted father, and a local hero. His sisters, Marie, Cherry, and the rest, were in disbelief. Marie later described him as the glue of our family, always the one keeping them grounded. Cherry, a police officer herself, summed it up best when she called Henry our protector, our rock. She admitted on camera that when she got the call, it felt like they took my heart. I've never experienced pain like it. Tragically, those words echoed through the family as they gathered his 5 children, an emotional moment no sibling should ever endure. A funeral in Dangriga on June 5th, attended by hundreds, became a community outpouring. Most Belizeans arrived in official uniform, from paramedics to police officers and civic leaders. Niece Maya, in tears at the podium, described Henry as my hero, He taught me to stand tall. The image of Cherry leaning on her sister brought Belizeans to tears. The loss extended far beyond sentimental grief. Jemmott was the primary caregiver for his 2 young children and co-parent to 3 more. The practical impact, emotional, financial, and community-based, echoed through family testimonies. He taught them right from wrong. Now we don't know how to continue without him, one sister told journalists. A local school counselor spoke of the ripple effect in classrooms, saying, "Children who knew him feel they'd lost a father figure too." In an initial statement, Hartin suggested the shot came from a passing boat, a theory she quickly abandoned after meeting with her lawyer. Commissioner Chester Williams reiterated that investigators found no signs of a third-party presence, no footprints beyond hers, no additional shell casings, no eyewitnesses placing anyone else at the scene. All evidence pointed to a lone actor incident, not random violence. Gun expert David Katz, a former DEA instructor from the U.S., noted that the Glock's trigger mechanism requires approximately 5 to 6 pounds of deliberate pressure. He described Hartin's story, especially given the weapon's design and her hand position, as unlikely but possible, lending some plausibility to her claim of accidental discharge. Witnesses and security footage portrayed Hartin as visibly shaken. She wandered the pier in shock, blood on her hands, and made no attempt to flee or stage the scene. Resort staff confirmed she remained distraught beside Jemmott's floating form in the water. Investigators also flagged Hartin's delay in reporting and her attempt to change clothes before seeking help. Registering alarm, the court later noted the absence of an immediate 911 call from her, and crucially, no documented effort to perform CPR. These findings charted the trajectory of the entire legal case. The forensic details largely supported Hartin's account of mishandling, unintentional but tragic. Investigators ruled out external involvement and premeditation. The lack of alcohol testing left some questions open, but the physical evidence and expert testimony formed the backbone of the prosecution's decision. In the end, authorities charged Hartin with manslaughter by negligence rather than murder. Her guilty plea acknowledged the fatal mistake, but stopped short of admitting intent. The court considered a single fatal shot from the officer's own weapon, close-range discharge at head height, no third-party interference, and a plausible, but legally negligent, claim that the gun fired accidentally during handling. At the same time, anger began to surface. Cherry later spoke to CBS, saying the circumstances felt like more than accident, calling it an execution in reverse, a phrase that haunted public discourse. Friends recalled Henry's career, pointing to a spotless record in law enforcement. His integrity had been so well known that his sudden death made them question everything, especially Hartin's initial actions and reaction. As the world watched, Belizeans across social media began sharing photos and memories of King in his element, directing traffic at hurricane zones, volunteering as youth mentor, and celebrating small fishing class triumphs with his children. One Facebook post quoted a local community leader, "He gave his life to protect us. Now we're left asking why not enough was done to save him." That sentiment only deepened after Hartin's explanation and sentencing. By the time the legal proceedings began, the family had already vowed never to let the story fade. Marie explained to reporters that accepting a simple apology would never be enough. His last breaths should stand for something meaningful: change, transparency, accountability. Cherry echoed her sister's conviction. If we don't speak for Henry now, what will he become? Just another statistic. Amid national grief, the family also asked tough questions of the justice system. Why hadn't Hartin performed CPR? Why did she wait to call for help? Why was no blood alcohol content taken? Those questions began to fuel public debate around privilege and fairness. Meanwhile, the public rallies in Dangriga and San Pedro, though small, carried an unmistakable message: justice for King. Banners with his photo and the words, "Who watches the protectors?" were seen at city council meetings. A Facebook fundraiser was launched to support his children's education. At last count, it had raised over 50,000 Belize dollars, a testament to the community's solidarity. His former colleagues in the police association wore black armbands for a month. The sentiment was clear. Henry had been more than a cop. He was Belize's heart. By early June 2021, authorities formally charged Hartin with manslaughter by negligence, and her bond was set at 30,000 Belize dollars. She was transferred to Hattieville Prison before addressing Supreme Court bail. Hartin's defense team pointed to the absence of intent and Jemmott's own decision to teach her how to handle a firearm. Still, the case hinged on whether the gun's movement and angle were consistent with negligence, or if a more damning version should apply. When the case against Jasmine Hartin moved into the courtroom, the entire nation watched closely. In June 2022, Hartin entered a plea of manslaughter by negligence, signaling a critical shift in strategy that avoided a full murder trial. The prosecution, led by Crown Counsel Rick Vasquez, framed the plea as acknowledging a serious but ultimately unintentional act. First, Hartin had claimed prior unfamiliarity with firearms. In The Independent, she insisted she was not a gun person, but video footage surfaced showing her practicing with a shotgun at a private range, directly contradicting her statement. Henry's sister Cherry highlighted this, saying, "The video tell me that Jasmine is well-versed, have wide knowledge of bigger firearms." Hartin later conceded that the footage was from her 10th attempt at a watermelon. Second, the angle of the fatal shot was troubling. Experts and investigators questioned how a gun passed back by hand could align head high and at such distance from the head. Henry Jemmott stressed this felt more like an execution than an accident. Firearms experts explained that if someone is passing a gun safely, the barrel should point downward or in a neutral direction, not straight at the person's head. Third, immediately after the shot, Hartin did not summon medical help. Instead, hotel staff responded first. Hartin was later found distressed and blood-covered on the pier. She admitted her delay, saying she panicked and only later returned to the scene once she collected herself. Finally, there was no ballistic test for alcohol. Though both had been drinking, authorities reportedly did not perform breath or blood tests. Hartin admitted to having whiskey with Jemmott, but a senior officer said they had no clear signs of intoxication. These discrepancies, her initial story about a passing boat, quickly dismissed, prior gun experience despite contrary claims, the unclear mechanics of how the firearm was held, her delayed reaction, and the absence of intoxication tests raised enough doubt for her to be charged with manslaughter by negligence rather than murder. She ultimately pled guilty in April 2023, accepting that it was an accident, though she insisted she never pulled the trigger. Defense attorney Casanova Brown emphasized Hartin's clean record, her personal remorse, and the lack of any evidence of intent. He reminded the court that Jemmott himself had agreed to assist Hartin with the weapon, an essential detail, he argued, in showing that neither expected danger. Brown said his client was overwhelmed with grief after a tragic mistake, and he pressed for a non-custodial sentence. Throughout the hearing, Hartin was visibly emotional. At times, she wiped away tears. At others, stared at her hands. She did not testify, but her lawyers submitted a personal letter to the court in which she wrote, "If only I'd put it down first. I will live with this guilt forever." Both her expression and her words reflected sincere remorse, but they were not enough to fully reassure a grieving nation. Two of Jemmott's sisters, including Cherry, read victim impact statements at the sentencing hearing. Cherry's voice trembled as she described her brother's loss. "He was my protector. Now he is gone. gone because she wanted to learn from him. Their pain stressed the deep ripple of loss. 5 children without a father, a family without a protector, a community without a pillar. On July 5, 2023, Judge Arana announced the sentence: a fine of 50,000 Belize dollars, 300 hours of community service, a mandatory 1-year weapon ban, and a stipulation that Hartin could not legally own or possess a firearm in Belize for 10 years. The judge described the act as negligent but lacking malice or intent. She emphasized that the sentence was appropriate for the magnitude of the tragedy, yet stopped short of imprisonment. The verdict sparked immediate controversy. Among the courtroom audience, some wept. Others shouted "yes" in support of the punishment. Outside, banners read, "No justice without prison," and "Why does wealth matter?" A local legal observer told a Mandala newspaper, "Under Belizean law, negligence is punishable, but in real life, people expect more when a life is taken." International commentators echoed the debate, asking whether privilege had influenced sentencing. The Jemmott sisters, while composed, did not hide their disappointment. Cherry told reporters, "Looking at that sentence, you wonder, if either of us did this, would it have been the same?" Their sense of injustice, despite acknowledgement of the tragedy, became the driving force for calls to reform Belize's system. After sentencing, Hartin left the courtroom quietly, escorted by her attorney. She later made a public apology. "My family grieves with Jemmott's. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused." But this did little to stem criticism. Many saw the fine, around $25,000, as insufficient. "It's a slap on the wrist," one community leader said. In the months that followed the sentencing of Jasmine Hartin, the ripple effects of the tragedy spread far beyond court walls and official statements. Belizeans nationwide questioned whether the legal system had truly delivered justice, or whether it had faltered at the intersection of privilege, emotion, and loss. Public discourse turned sharply critical of the outcome. National talk shows replayed key moments from the trial, dissecting every argument and decision. Legal experts debated whether the fine of 50,000 Belize dollars in community service were adequately commensurate with a life lost. Some defended the punishment as stern within the country's legal standards. Others lamented what they saw as a failure to affirm the value of a dedicated public servant's sacrifice. Community leaders became more vocal. The Belize Police Association, in a written statement, called attention to lingering questions. "Our officers deserve assurance that they are protected equally under the law, not subject to legal outcomes shaped by fame or connections." Meanwhile, a petition gained momentum online and offline, calling for changes to how manslaughter by negligence is prosecuted. International attention focused on disparities in justice when cases involve prominent individuals. Commentators noted that Hartin, a socialite with access to legal advice and high-quality representation, had received a significantly lighter sentence than might be expected for similar incidents in other jurisdictions. That observation sparked broader concerns about fairness and equity in Belize's justice system. Despite the conviction and sentence, one glaring fact persists: no years-long prison term was levied. Advocates, including former police commissioners and human rights lawyers, argue that this case should drive meaningful legal reform. A Mandela columnist, Rodrigo Ayuso, wrote, "The legacy of King's death must not fade into complacency. This must be a turning point, not an aberration." The death of Henry King Jemmott and the events that followed have left a lasting imprint not only on his grieving family, but on the entire nation of Belize. As legal questions remain and the search for full accountability continues, one thing is certain: this was more than a personal tragedy. It was a moment that exposed uncomfortable truths about justice, power, and inequality in the Caribbean. What do you believe really happened that night on the pier in San Pedro? We want to hear from you. Was justice truly served, or is this a case of influence shielding accountability? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to help more people discover untold Caribbean true crime stories. Your support helps us continue to investigate and spotlight the stories that matter most. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and stay safe.